everybody, and welcome to a new Star Wars fan fiction. Today it's going to be what if Yoda restored the Jedi Order on Dagobah in order to fight Sidious. We're going to actually start our story during the Clone Wars here, but before we do, please do consider subscribing, leaving a like. It helps out a ton, and I'd greatly appreciate it. I love doing these. We're just going to keep going. So, let's get into it. We begin our story during the Clone Wars, as Yoda has been brought to Dagobah by the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon tells Yoda there is still so much to learn about the Force, including how to preserve life after death. Yoda follows the Fireflies Jinn has temporarily manifested himself into throughout the planet until he has a clear, frightening vision. In this vision, Yoda sees Jedi screaming in terror, clones acting like droids. Pain, suffering, destruction. Is this how the war would end? Qui-Gon looked at him. "What is it you always say about the future, Master Yoda?" Qui-Gon asked him. Always in motion, the future is," Yoda replied. Qui-Gon was right, but Yoda knew he must prepare a backup plan if all of this did truly go wrong. A way to call to Jedi if all went awry, and this planet was the perfect place to do so. If anything ever went wrong, Yoda would come here, and he would call to any Jedi that would listen. Now, the events of the Revenge of the Sith movie would play out exactly the same, but at the end of it, we pick up with Yoda and Obi-Wan preparing to depart into exile. "What now, Master?" Kenobi asked him. "Into hiding, but not without a plan," Yoda told him, and he described how he would recruit any willing Jedi survivor to his new home on Dagobah. If a Jedi were to enter a temple, Yoda would contact them to determine whether they were to be trusted to join him on Dagobah. But he told Obi-Wan that Obi-Wan would not be joining Yoda at this time. "Take the boy to Tatooine and the girl to Alderaan, you will. No place to raise children, Dagobah is. In 10 years' time, bring them you will, and train them we will." And so the two masters departed, Yoda to Dagobah to attempt to contact scattered Jedi, and Obi-Wan with the children, until the time was right. Now, roughly 5 years later, we pick back up. Ahsoka Tano lands on a largely inhabited planet. She got out of her ship and looked at the Jedi Temple, with 2 moons directly above it. She'd never been on Tython before, but the Force was extremely strong here, making it the perfect place to meditate and explore the Jedi Temple. Ahsoka was considering joining a tiny rebellion, but wanted to spend a long time here first, meditating on her future, meditating on her path. So she stepped inside the old temple, and it was well preserved despite being one of the oldest, and she sat down in a small meditation room. She meditated for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was days, trying to understand her path. Then in her meditation, a vision. Anakin on a fiery planet, a darkness around him like she'd never seen. Then Padme screaming, giving birth perhaps. Now Obi-Wan Kenobi on the same fiery planet, but he was standing atop a hill, crying, holding Anakin's lightsaber. And now Yoda. "Yoda," she gasped. This was more real than any of the vision. Yoda was there. "Ah, young Ahsoka, surprised by your survival? I am not," Yoda said to her. "Master Yoda, how? What happened?" said Ahsoka. And from there, Yoda told her all about Sidious, the Emperor, Anakin, Obi-Wan, everything. And then he ended, extending an offer to her. "Destroy the Sith, we must, Ahsoka. Join me on Dagobah, some Jedi have. Need your help, we do," Yoda told her. "We?" she asked. And then Quinlan Vos, Shak Ti, and a young human male stepped out. "Join Master Vos, Master T, Padawan Kestis, and I to defeat the Emperor you must." Ahsoka looked at them, and she agreed, and set course for Dagobah. There she would land and train with the other Jedi. This task would take many years to prepare for, fighting the Emperor, fighting the Sith. But the Jedi were not just bound to Dagobah. They very rarely would leave, but when they did, it would be to go on some mercy missions with extreme discretion, but they had time. They had 5 remaining years to wait for Kenobi, and in this time, they would train, and they would help those in need very discreetly. When the day finally came, Kenobi landed a ship and exited with 2 10-year-old children. Dagobah was no place to raise children when they were both born, but the Jedi Masters had spent much time creating a small, hidden village with a room for each person to sleep, a meditation room, and a training room to make living here so much better for everybody. The food was bad, but they would make do. The training then would continue, and 5 years later, two more Jedi would show up, Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger. Ezra was different than the others, as he was never trained at the temple. In fact, the Jedi that brought Ezra, Kanan, aka Caleb Doom, was merely a boy when it all had happened those years ago, similar to Cal Kestis. The two were accepted in the New Order, and it was now seemingly completed. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Quinlan Vos, Shaak Ti, Cal Kestis, Kanan Jarrus, Ezra Bridger, and the young Luke and Leia. Now here together, they continued to live and train in their small Dagobah village, and in a few years' time, they would be ready to move on the Emperor. This, though, was not the life of a Jedi that Ezra had thought it would be. When he'd started, he expected excitement and constant, fighting and just having fun with it. And after about a year of living like a Jedi on Dagobah, he wanted more. He wanted to explore. So one night, Ezra woke up Leia, who he'd formed a strong bond with. The two had always talked about exploring around here, and mainly exploring the forbidden dark side cave. How bad could it truly be, they thought. And so the two young Jedi just had to know what was down there. So down they went, and they entered the cave after just a bit of hesitation. It was dark, not just in sight, but all the senses. It just felt dark in this cave. The two explored a bit more, until Leia heard a branch crack behind them. What was that? She muttered in fear. Probably just a spiny bog rat or something. Come on, Leia. Ezra trying to mask his fear as the two continued on. But Leia knew something was off. It felt dark, yet familiar. So she stopped, and she listened. She swore she could hear something. And that something grew louder. Robotic, powerful breathing. And a red lightsaber ignited, and a huge dark figure emerged from the darkness. This dark figure removed its mask, and it's like Leia was looking in a mirror. It was her. But then the face became Luke. Then it changed again to a man with long, wavy hair and a scar across his eye. Join me, rule as a family, the man spoke before disappearing as Obi-Wan and Ahsoka ran into the cave to find Leia and Ezra paralyzed with fear. Who was that? Leia asked as she was then laid down in the village, and Leia revealed exactly what she had seen. Obi-Wan had heard rumors of Vader, Anakin, surviving, but this was confirmation. He, Ahsoka, and Yoda called Luke and Leia into a room and explained everything. How Anakin was found as a boy, how Obi-Wan had trained him, how he had then trained Ahsoka, and how he was manipulated to the dark side by the Emperor, who claimed he could save their mother. The children listened and were saddened by what their father had become. The next few days were better, and the young Jedi understood now why not to go to the cave more than they had ever before. Yoda meditated on the Force when he suddenly felt a ripple that had been created by the young Jedi entering the cave. If Yoda had felt this. And suddenly a large shuttle emerged from hyperspace above the clouds. Yoda could barely see it through the fog, but he'd felt it, and so had the others. Yoda looked around their small village to see Quinlan and Shaak Ti putting out all the lighting fires and making sure all 10 Jedi were accounted for. Yoda met with everyone in the meditation room, and they all stood there, waiting to see who had arrived. After some time, 2 red-bladed Inquisitors emerged near the village. The Jedi couldn't live in fear, but they were waiting for the right time to split up and take these 2 out. Once the 2 Inquisitors had separated, the Jedi broke off into 2 groups. Obi-Wan Kanan, and Quinlan went to the man, while Ahsoka, Yoda, and Cal tailed the woman. The Jedi emerged and battled the Inquisitors, making rather easy work of them, each group taking on the Inquisitors in a 3v1 battle, while Shaak Ti guarded Ezra, Luke, and Leia. The Inquisitors clearly had not expected a whole 10 Jedi to be here, but this was easy. Too easy, perhaps. And the two groups of Jedi were at the far end of the village when Yoda felt something. They turned around and saw a dark figure falling down from the trees, landing on top of the meditation room and sending the room into an explosion with the Force. Shaak Ti fell and then ignited her blue lightsaber as she got up, but a moment later a red one went right through her back, killing her instantly, as the Lord Vader rose up behind her. It was a bit of a trap. Vader had sent in the Inquisitors to see who was truly here, and the young Jedi group of Ezra, Luke, and Leia ignited their sabers as the rest of the Jedi ran at Vader, but he sent a powerful Force wave throughout, sending everyone flying back a ways as a cloaked figure floated up beside Vader. He spoke. "The Jedi hunting has gone cold for too long. We were waiting and just needed one misstep in the Force to find your new pathetic home." And Sidious electrocuted the training room and a few of the Jedi rooms, sending wood everywhere. "Once more, I will destroy the Jedi, this time for good." Yoda looked up at him, not if anything to say about it. "We have." And he ignited his green saber as Kanan, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Quinlan, and Cal gathered behind him, and the Jedi charged the Sith. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka took Luke and Leia and engaged Vader, hoping to actually speak to him. And now Yoda, Quinlan, Kanan, Cal, and Ezra engaged the Emperor, engaged Sidious. There was no talking to him, only killing him. He was pure evil, pure power. And the Sith truly were powerful, but the Jedi had been training here for a long time, and their power had grown as well. As the fight with Vader continued on, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan weren't getting anywhere with him. They were yelling at him, yelling "Anakin," but he seemed gone. Vader seemed to be all that remained. And Vader shrugged off both, blocking lightsaber hits, and then charged at Luke. Vader, after a quick strikes at Luke, cut off his hand and prepared to kill him, until Luke yelled, "Father, please!" Vader stopped. He could feel it. He had a son and a daughter. He looked over at Leia. The Jedi had kept them from him. No, Sidious had hid them. They both played a role in this, and Vader looked over to the other fight and saw Sidious cut down Quinlan Vos. The body of Cal Kestis lay motionless near them as well. Kanan and Ezra were being electrocuted together as Sidious battled Yoda. Vader hated the Jedi, and he hated Sidious equally as much at this point. He had children. He had to act. He had to do it for Padme. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan watched him turn to Sidious and grab him with the Force, as he was completely focused on the Jedi. Vader broke his wrist and the saber fell out of his hand, and in the small moment that Sidious shifted his attention to Vader, Yoda flipped above him and cut his head off clean. The galaxy stood still. The Emperor, Darth Sidious, was dead. Here stood Darth Vader. "Anakin," Obi-Wan said as he approached, but Vader had a different plan, and in a swift motion he grabbed Obi-Wan by the throat, throwing him into the nearby housing. He then sprinted directly at Ahsoka, feeling more anger, but also more hope than ever before. He disarmed Ahsoka, kicked her into the swamp, and then Luke and Leia screamed, as Vader pulled them in with the Force and leapt to his ship. He used the Force to knock out both of the young Jedi, and as he was boarding, he began to take off, placing them down. He began to fly up, when suddenly, his ship came to a complete stop. Looking out the window, Yoda was using both hands to grab the ship. Vader put everything into the accelerator, but now Obi-Wan and Ahsoka had recovered just enough to join in. He could have killed them, but he hadn't. Why? Yoda crushed the engines, and the ship came slowly crashing down, guided by the Jedi, crashing down, though, enough to create a severe impact as it hit the ground. The Jedi entered the ship to find Vader breathing heavily, his respirator severely damaged, as part of the damaged ship had punctured it. Yoda brought Luke and Leia outside as Obi-Wan and Ahsoka approached a dying Vader. "Anakin," said Ahsoka this time. Vader had lost, and he knew it. He removed his helmet, eyes full of tears, before finally speaking to the two Jedi he'd left alive just moments ago. "I could have made her proud. I could have taken her children and raised them how she would have wanted," Anakin and Vader said together. "I should have saved them all three, Padme, the children. I'm sorry." And Vader died, terribly weakened both physically and emotionally. The Sith were gone. His body was taken out and buried in the middle of the dark side cave and the broken village. The survivors of the battle were Yoda, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Luke, Leia, and Ezra. Shaak Ti, Quinlan Vos, Cal Kestis, and Kanan Jarrus were killed and then buried. The Jedi would rebuild, but they decided this would not be on Dagobah, nor Coruscant. They would travel to the temple on Tython, where Ahsoka had been found years ago. And it was there that they would restart the Order, changing their ways to better model the Jedi, who had been there long before. They would stay out of politics for now. The Empire was falling without an emperor, and a rising rebellion was there to take its place. The Jedi would do what they had to do to rise up again. That's where we're going to end today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. As always, please do subscribe, leave a like. What would you have changed? What would you have liked to see? I'd love to know. And yeah, thank you again. We are over 2,200 subscribers. I love it. Sorry, 1,200, of course. Anyways, appreciate you all. Let's get to 1 million today. No, not really, but leave a comment, leave a like. And yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate you all very, very much.